All right, so anabolic steroids make you bigger because it's increased synthesis, block degradation, but they cause the tendon to become small and weak. Growth hormone doesn't really affect muscle size, but it affects our collagen so that we don't get as many injuries and we can train more frequently. How about on the other side of things, when we're looking at endurance-based things? And this is probably the one that most people are most familiar with if you watch sporting events like the Tour de France, like marathons, like anything that's an endurance-based event. So erythropoietin is this drug that basically your kidney naturally produces when you don't have enough red blood cells. And it's a signal that tells your bone marrow to start producing more red blood cells. So what does it do? So this is 8 weeks of erythropoietin treatment. And all they're doing is they're looking to see what happens to these athletes. They're not changing their training. They're doing nothing to their training. And so this is the control group. They maintained their same VO2 max, and they didn't have any changes associated with the training that they did because they didn't change their training. 8 weeks of erythropoietin, what happens? Bam, you get a 13% increase in VO2 max. So a 13% increase in VO2 max is absolutely massive. Remember, VO2 max isn't going to determine who wins the race, but it certainly is going to get you into the final because that's the ante that you're playing with. So if you can get your VO2 max from 65 up to say 71, that's a 10% increase. That's pretty damn good. So now you've gone from 65 to 71. Now you're in the elite level. Now that elite level VO2 max, if you're staying and you're still able to work at 80% of that VO2 max when you're competing, now you're able to go that much faster and you're able to win. Okay, so this is why, and this drug was developed in Italy originally, and it was first brought to Europe by this Italian doctor. At the time, there were a lot of Belgians who were really big into cycling because the world's greatest cycling at the time was Eddy Merckx, and Eddie was a Belgian. And so what happened was that a lot of people started taking erythropoietin because this doc came around and said, this is going to increase your VO2 max, it's going to make you a better cyclist. And many individuals, Bert Oosterbach is the first professional cyclist that we know to have died because of erythropoietin use. Because remember what EPO is doing, it's increasing red blood cell production. And these are not individuals who are like, oh, a little bit is doing great. They're like, okay, a little bit did really well. I'm going to inject a lot. And when you inject a lot, you get a lot of red blood cells. When you get a lot of red blood cells, your blood isn't so much of a liquid as it is a gel because it becomes thick, it becomes viscous. And what happens is that if you have any small little areas in your, say in your brain, you've got a small narrowing of an artery. Now there's going to be a lot more red blood cells. They can't get through there. They're going to form a clot. When they form a clot, you get a stroke. Or if that happens in your heart, you get a heart attack. And so a lot of very young Belgian cyclists started dropping dead on their bikes because their blood was so thick that it couldn't circulate properly. And as a result, they got blood clots in their heart and in their brain, had strokes or heart attacks at a very young age. Okay, so this is one that you have to be very careful with because erythropoietin is very, very deadly. Because if you use it and if you do increase your red blood cell mass too much, you will drop dead. All right, so let's talk about happier things. Let's talk about things that are allowed, things that are legal. So this is a really cool one. And we talked about this in the last lecture where we talked about why do you eat your fruits and vegetables? One of the reasons I told you eat your fruits and vegetables is because your vegetables like your carrots, your chard, and your beets have in them these nitrates. And nitrates are good at making your body work better. They open up blood vessels to your working muscles, and that increases blood flow in a very legal way. So this is a really cool study where they took individuals on a bike and they had them do a time trial. And the time trial was about 30 minutes worth of work. And what they did is 2 hours before they did that, they gave them half a liter of either beetroot juice, which is really rich in nitrates and nitrites, or they give them a placebo. And you might be thinking, how could you do a placebo for beetroot juice? Because that stuff is just disgusting tasting. It tastes like dirt. It's chewing dirt. Well, what they did is they took the beetroot juice and they just poured it across a little container of charcoal. And the charcoal bound to all the nitrates, so at the end, you'd still get really purple color. You'd still get the horrible flavor, but you didn't have the active ingredient, which is the nitrates. All right. So what happened? When they did it with the placebo, their performance was 3%, 2.7% worse than when they did it with the beetroot juice. And so what that means is that simply drinking some beetroot juice improved your athletic performance by 2.7%. That's an incredible thing. You didn't do anything. You just drank some yucky stuff and you went 3% faster. And it wasn't because it was so bad that it tasted so horrible that you had to get off the bike as fast as you could. It actually had this physiological response. So this is one of the reasons. So what are the drawbacks of beetroot juice? There's got to be some horrible things. Well, it decreases your blood pressure, so that's great. But what it does do, and if you don't know about this beforehand, it can scare the crap out of you. This is actually a urine sample from an elite athlete who has drunk about a half a liter of beetroot juice. That does not look normal. And if you saw that coming out of you, or if you saw that in the toilet when you were done, you would freak out. But that is a completely normal thing to happen with beetroot juice. It turns your pee and your poo a purple color. And some people think that that's a wonderful thing, and other people freak out at it. But really for us, it's a great thing, because what it does is it gives placebo reinforcement. Because if I see myself peeing a purple color, I know that I've taken my beetroot juice. I know that I'm going to get the positive effects of beetroot juice, which is I'm going to increase performance. That means tomorrow I'm going to go out there and I'm going to run my best race I've ever run. That's a great advantage. So it's not a drawback really, but it is something you better know about beforehand. All right, so what other drugs that we know of are legal? Here's the most common drug in the world. The most common performance-enhancing drug in the world, caffeine. Caffeine. Yep. So this is the first study by Larry Spreet. Lawrence Spreet is probably one of the really top-end exercise physiologists / nutrition people in the world. And he's literally written the book on caffeine and performance. So one of his first studies here is showing that even if there's not a single person who doesn't improve their performance on caffeine. So here is one individual, they improved by 5%, one individual 87%, 60%. Everybody improved. Not everybody improved the same, but everybody improved their performance just by taking 200 milligrams of caffeine before they did this little race. So that's outstanding. They were able to go longer. They were able to compete harder. They were able to go faster just by taking in caffeine. All right. The NCAA, if you're an NCAA athlete, you might know that caffeine is still on the banned list, but you'll take solace in this that somebody actually did an experiment to see if they could possibly drink enough coffee to test positive for caffeine and using the NCAA markers. They had 16 cups of coffee and didn't even come close to the levels that are forbidden by the NCAA. So unless you're taking concentrated caffeine tablets, there's no way you're going to get over what is allowed by the NCAA. All right, so caffeine and performance, without a doubt, every single person is going to improve. Some people don't improve as well as others. A lot of that has to do with your genetics. If you are a fast metabolizer of caffeine, you might have to take your caffeine closer to your performance. If you're a slow metabolizer of caffeine, maybe you can take it earlier in the day. Do you need to do your genetic test to see whether you're fast or slow? No, not at all. I've got the test here. All you do is when it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, drink an espresso. If at 8 o'clock, I would never assume that you guys go to bed at 8 o'clock. So drink your espresso at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And then if you can't go to sleep normally at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock or whenever the hell you normally go to sleep, and you're up all night because you feel caffeinated, you're a slow metabolizer of caffeine. If you go to bed like completely normal, you're a fast metabolizer. You're going to have to take it closer to your performance. All right, so any bad things about caffeine? Here's a fun study. This is like one of the classic fun studies. What this guy did, this is a NASA scientist, and what he did is he injected flies, dead flies, with different drugs, and then he fed them to spiders, and then he watched the spiders make their webs. And so when he injected them with water, the dead flies with water, and the spiders ate them, their webs looked completely normal. When they injected them with marijuana beforehand, with THC, then they looked at the At the spider web is like, yeah, man, whatever. But look what happened with caffeine, man. These spiders are messed up. Look at LSD. LSD, they're like, wee. They're going, everything's fine, and then they're like, whoa, something went wrong. With caffeine, they get into this like pointless thing, like woo, woo. They totally go crazy. There's not a single bit of pattern in here. Whereas you can see pattern in the marijuana, you see it in the LSD. So caffeine is doing something to your brain. That's really how it affects performance. What happens is your performance improves because your brain makes you think that that's easier. You all know that. You got it up to take an exam and you're sleepy from the night before. You take your coffee and you're like, yeah, I think I can do this. But beforehand there was like, oh God, there's no way in hell I could do this. There's nothing. All caffeine does is affects the brain. It allows you to think that whatever you're going to do is easier than it was before the caffeine. All right. Here are the things that we talked about today. We talked about some things that are outlawed, like anabolic steroids, growth hormone, and erythropoietin. The nitrate-rich beetroot juice, perfectly good. The caffeine, perfectly good. Totally legal. So basically, what I'm telling you is the best way to improve performance is use training, nutrition, and sleep. If you're lazy or if you've maximized all of those things, some people turn to these performance boosters, but that's not really where we're going to go with it. All right. So what I'd like is go out and do a little bit of exercise, enjoy yourself. There's no need for any of these things. Maybe take a coffee because that's wonderful. All right. You guys take care.